everybody. We are back at the World of Wellness weekend celebration. So we have a lot of different events going on today. We have a lot of different speakers happening today. We have free food coming as well, free samples. Obviously, all different types of informative, great talks. So a lot of different things happening. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on the schedule today. So we have a very incredible speaker coming up right now on CBD, Amy Lechner. So we'll talk about that in a second. At 11, we have a chiropractor here, Dr. Phil Ross. At 12, at high noon, I will be speaking on natural pain inflammation. And then wrapping up, the owner and CEO of Nutrition Frontiers and the clinic, Jamie Dorley, as well as Joe Messino, will be speaking at 1. So a lot of the great speakers, come on down. We also are recording this on Facebook and YouTube as well for people who can't join us in person. Of course, we have a lot of great specials happening. If anybody, we love for you to come on down. But if you want to call in, it is 412-922-9355. So with that being said, I wanted to introduce one of my favorite accounts of all time. I've known her for a long time, over 20 years. Yeah. Dr. Amy Lechner. She is out of Altoona. Mm-hmm. She is a master essential oil person. So she's going to share with that. She's a naturopath as well. And she has also many other jobs in companies.
Lots of roles.
Including hairstylist to the stars. Mm-hmm. Very holistic.
To the stars.
Yes, out of Altoona. And so, but she really came to us. She said, Mike, I have a lot of great information on CBD and cannabis. There's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people think that there's no difference between what CBD here and what you can buy at the gas station. And we try to tell people this, and some people understand this, but not everybody does. So we wanted, to have this talk today, just really separating fact from fiction, as the title says, and also even on cannabis. We know some people go into medical marijuana route, and again, for some, it's a lifesaver. So she's going to get into that as well. But really, what to look for and how can you tell the difference between quality CBD and not so good, right? So without further ado, I will leave you with Dr. Amy Lechner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I am, as Mike said, a traditional naturopath. I am a certified aromatherapist and a licensed hairstylist in the state of Pennsylvania. I own a large hair salon in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and I also own a wellness practice. And I've been working with clients for 20 years, maybe a little bit more. And I'll have to be real honest, as Mike said, we've known each other for a really long time. And when he came to me and he was like, hey, we have a new CBD product, I was like, no, thank you. I'm not interested. And a lot of that was due to misinformation, the prohibition, information that has been sold to us as it being a bad thing. So I was just really like, it was kind of like a hard, no, I'm not interested. And then knowledge happened. And when there's knowledge, there is power. So I started taking some classes and I started doing a little bit of research. The trouble is in the United States, because of the prohibition, the research is very, very limited. I'm going to break down some of the history, like where we are, a little bit of where we're trending. I'm going to go into a little bit of like cell biology and a little science, just because it's really important for you to know that going forward, the cannabis industry is really, really, it's a growing thing and more people are using it. So we need to be equipped with knowledge. And my objective is to just arm you with as much information as possible in a very small bite-sized dose. I love learning, so I'm always taking classes. I'm always trying to learn more. There is a lot of research that's being done outside of this country, but in this country, we're still kind of trying to catch up because of the medical marijuana card and it being legalized in many states now, we're able to see a little bit more clear research. So let's get started. Just a little bit of history about the prohibition. Prior to 1906, there is a lot of documented use for cannabis for general health concerns. There was industrial hemp that was used for clothes making, they used it for products and things like that. There are some documented cases of like 2000 AD, 2000 BC, like so far back. There's documented uses of cannabis in health. But we have entering in 1937, we had this anti cannabis legislation, and it started with Harry Anslinger. And he was actually, his role was just to kind of tax these people who were using marijuana. And nobody was really filing for tax licensing because there was so much controversy over the legalization of it. So if you file taxes, then you might get caught. And then it's like, okay, so why do that? So then we had the Boggs Act and then finally the Controlled Substance Act in 1970. And there was a lot of turmoil within that time frame in our government, just saying, like, this is a bad thing, or let's tax it. How can we make money off of it? And the Controlled Substance Act really started this campaign on the gateway drug and how bad cannabis is, and leading into this place of like, it's bad for you. Don't do it. It's going to cause you to use worse drugs, and really didn't look at the value of it for health. We'll get to 1972 and the Schaefer Commission. He was proposing, like, let's just remove this from a Schedule I drug. And he said he didn't believe that it was a gateway drug. And he challenged some of these theories, but it kind of just got swept under the rug. So we kind of have like all this turmoil in the government. All the while, people are using cannabis. Cannabis has been used illegally for quite a while. And a lot of that was what gave me my no early on. And so I was still stuck in 1972. Just kidding. I was just kind of stuck in that mindset. So in 98, we start seeing a little bit of hemp seed, which is different than hemp. Hemp seed is taking the seed and making a fatty oil out of it. And then you'll see hemp seed oil. That was introduced, and you started to see it being used in body care products. And then starting in 2024, it was kind of safe. Like, okay, we can separate hemp seed from hemp plant, and we can use it that way. So it's kind of a backdoor approach. There's no psychoactive properties to using a fatty oil of like hemp seed oil. But then in 2007, North Dakota farmers, they started this hemp licensing, and it was for industrial hemp farming. Whenever that started, it started kind of shifting the narrative a little bit. And in 2014, Obama signed the Farm Bill Act allowing us to farm hemp legally. In 27 from 2014 to 2017, there was a 140% increase in cultivation of hemp, which is a little crazy. It's kind of like, okay, well, now that we have the green light, let's put the pedal to the metal and go for it. So then in 2018, we had any hemp products that contain 0.03% or less THC. That was actually removed from the Schedule I classification. So that is just a little bit of like kind of where we were and where we're going, and how this plant is trending. So if you look at the money, cannabis sales are expected by this year end to reach $44 billion. And that's cannabis straight across the board. We're talking about full spectrum hemp extract, hemp products, medical cannabis. And then a lot of states are starting to allow for recreational use legally. So it's just going to continue to grow. Medical cannabis, which Pennsylvania has a medical cannabis program, between 2019 and 2024, the growth like 9.7 billion to 25.2 billion. There's dispensaries all over our state. And so you're going to just start to see that more and more. Cannabis still remains a Schedule 1 drug on the federal level. So that means you can, if you have a medical card and you have cannabis, you cannot drive it legally across the state line. You cannot fly with it because in the federal government, it is illegal. But there's so many changes. So it's kind of like a little bit tricky. So it's been, and these numbers don't add up to 50, like I understand that, but medically legalized in 35 states, 4 territories, and DC. Within those, there's a crossover with some that's legalized meaning like recreationally. Maryland just became a legalized state. Colorado, Oregon, California, like they're all just legalized recreationally. And then 16 states in one territory, it remains completely illegal, both for medical and for recreational use. In those states, the only thing that you can legally use is full spectrum hemp extract, which we'll get to, that has 0.03% or less THC. And THC is just a cannabinoid. I'll tell you about that. So, just looking at the plant botany, I am an aromatherapist, and part of my role as an aromatherapist is to look at the plant and what it has to tell us and what we can gain from that plant knowledge. So the cannabis plant has trichomes, which are living cells to protect the leaf and flowers. They're like an oily resin, and it changes as the plant grows. And a young plant will have a different cannabinoid profile than a mature plant. So if you've ever had like thyme or basil or lavender and you've touched the leaves on the leaves, if you rub the leaves and smell your fingers, you'll smell the oil that is in that plant. Cannabis is the same. So there's underneath the leaf, there's like little oil glands not visible to the eye. And the trichomes are actually waxy, like a resin. And it feels like the waxiness feels a little bit like if you were to have butter and add like a little bit of like something sticky, like syrup or something. Like it has like a little bit of a oily, waxy feel. Within the cannabis industry, they classify the chemovars as type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 is THC predominant. Type 2 is a balance of CBD and THC, and type 3 is CBD predominant. There's types of distillation. So, how do we extract the plant material from the plant? So, we have an isolate, broad spectrum, and full spectrum, and that just indicates how the plant has been or how the material has been extracted from the plant. Cannabis is grown and cultivated for strains, and there's sativa and indica. You'll see a little bit now. There's ruderalis, which is another strain of cannabis, so within the sativa and indica chemovars, there are they'll take and kind of try to manipulate the cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids are THC, CBD, and many, many others. And they'll take and make hybrids of like a strain. So, and I'm talking about cannabis that's THC dominant. You might see like blueberry diesel or something where they've taken different chemovars and kind of combined them to make get the cannabinoid profile that they want. The hemp plant, which is a cannabis plant, but it is what is allowed to be grown according to the Farm Bill Act, and it is usually cultivated to be CBD dominant with very low levels of THC. The hemp plant is actually what, like when we look at documented uses, like historically, it's usually the hemp plant. They've kind of segregated the terminology out just to indicate to the consumer cannabis, higher THC, hemp, higher CBD, but they're all the cannabis plant. So we have the distillation classifications, and this is literally just how the material is extracted from the plant. An isolate is just isolating one cannabinoid. So if you have a CBD isolate, you are only getting CBD. there is most likely no THC because just like within the pharmaceutical industry, if they isolate a constituent, then they can make it work and then they can mix it with other constituents to give you a different effect. Distillate or broad spectrum is whenever it's extracted through a distillation process and they manipulate it to get the THC out because some of these cannabinoids live at certain temperatures. So you can control the temperature of distillation to get exactly the cannabinoids you want. Full spectrum, which is what Nutritional Frontiers has all of the cannabinoids, including a small amount of THC. It is always tested to be at 0.03% or less because that is the legal limit. So when you get a full spectrum hemp extract, you can expect to have a little bit of THC in there. As a disclaimer, I would not recommend if you get drug tested for your employment. I just wouldn't use it at all. There are other products that can work on the cannabinoid system, but it's not, like you weigh risk versus benefit, and is the risk worth the benefit? That's just not something that's like your decision. But we as a company don't recommend using the products if you are getting tested. So just a side note, little disclaimer. So with the full spectrum hemp extract, we have what's called an entourage effect. And regardless of whether you're using medical marijuana or you're using full spectrum hemp extract, anytime you're using the whole plant, and this includes any botanical, when you use the whole plant, you're getting all of the minor constituents that lend to the larger constituent action. So the entourage effect is where you see cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, all the minor components, and they're all working together for the same benefit of overall health. Again, Nutritional Frontiers products are full spectrum hemp extracts. So we're going to get that entourage effect. So it's going to give you a very balanced effect in the end. So when we look at cannabinoids, there are about 150 cannabinoids that they know of. But because this is such I'll say a new field of research, because we're allowed to research and we're allowed to look at some of this now, they're starting to uncover more and more and more. And these cannabinoids are just constituents, not just, but constituents that work within the cannabis plant. I have 4 listed here. There are numerous, several, and some of them they don't even know. And as we have access to real plants to study, then this information will change. And as I said in the slide, for the dollar growth over the years, within the usage consumer growth, it's going to drive research and it's going to drive the need for informed information. If you are a practitioner, I really, really, really encourage you to write case studies where you're documenting your patient's journey. If you're familiar with Nutritional Frontiers at all, you've probably seen the man that has Parkinson's and is riding the bicycle, and like studies like that are going to help just kind of document our own journey in this land of wellness. So CBD is found in high amounts in industrial hemp. THC, which is kind of like the star of the show, like everybody I feel like has heard about THC. It's the one that has the psychoactive component. People who have that buy it in the dispensaries will usually try to find a THC dominant. But the thing about THC alone is that in small, low doses, it's an anxiolytic. When it's taken in higher doses, it can actually cause anxiousness and paranoia. But the cannabinoid CBD drives that action down. So when you have a full spectrum, that's when you're going to get that entourage effect that's going to keep you balanced. CBN, I always remember nighty night. That's for the help with sleep. It does help with pain relief. All of the cannabinoids help on varying levels with pain relief, with sleep, with anxiousness. And it's just finding that right mix. CBG is anti-inflammatory, but they're finding in the research that it's really helpful. CBG specifically, gut, um, helps with like IBS, IBD, and a lot of inflammation in the gut. That's just really new research. There's not a lot of it. But again, when you're isolating cannabinoids, you're not going to get that entourage effect. So you really need to have the whole full spectrum. So this is just a little bit of a graph going over some of the top cannabinoids. You'll see across the top it's CBC, CBCA, and you'll see A and V after a couple of them. A is an acid that's added to the molecular structure, so it changes the polarization to a negative polarized cannabinoid. Um, so we're looking at, like all of the cannabinoids, and this is going to get a little chemical, and I am not a chemist. So just, I'm kind of trying to break it way down so that you can utilize the information, but the V is the variant. And so those are just cannabinoids that they're studying and research. But if you go about halfway through the page, you can see CBD straight down the line. Apart from stimulating the appetite and reducing eye pressure, it helps with a lot of our common minor issues. And again, I am not diagnosing, treating, curing any diseases. I'm just saying cannabis and CBD can really help moderate these things in the body. When you get a full spectrum hemp extract, even if they have like a gas chromatography, a GCMS report, or a certificate of analysis. It depends on how refined the testing is to see all of those minor cannabinoids, because a lot of times you won't see that on a report because they're super minor and sometimes they just don't have enough molecular weight to show up. So just because it's not listed on a report doesn't mean it's not in there. So the phytocannabinoid activity table, this is actually on, if you go to Nutritional Frontiers, to the CBDNF website, they have this on their little, on their website. And it's just a little bit of information that kind of just sums up what I'm going to go over. But on the back of this on page 2 is what is here. And it just looks at what the cannabinoids are. And then you'll see on the far side of the paper where there's synergistic terpenoids. Terpenes are drivers for cannabis. As an interesting side note, and one of the draws for me as an aromatherapist is aromatherapy. My whole entire training is on terpenes. I was like, oh, well, you're speaking my language. I get that. So terpenes drive CBD, drive the cannabinoids to make them more active. So it's just another part that's in the full spectrum hemp extract. So we're going to talk about the endocannabinoid system. And I find this to be really interesting because, again, with my original no, I was completely ignorant to all of this. But we have an endogenous cannabinoid system, which means that's what's inside of our body. There are not a lot of pharmaceuticals. Our supplements work on systems of the body, but they don't have an endogenous part in the body that's kind of making that up. The closest thing I could think about is enzymes. Like we have enzymes that our body makes, but sometimes we need to take enzymes to assist it, but it's not a system. So I'm not sure where in our wellness profile that we actually have a system that supports taking and using cannabis. So our endogenous cannabinoids, and again, this is just the start of it. They're finding more and more of these endogenous cannabinoids, but it's 2-AG and AEA or anandamide. That is what our body makes. So we have endogenous cannabinoids and we have CB receptor sites. They talk to each other. But sometimes we don't always get the most benefit from what our body is making because we're all stressed out and we don't eat right and we don't move right and we don't poop right. Isn't that what Tracy says, or Dr. Bob? eat right, think right, move right. So all of those things impact our endogenous cannabinoid production. So then we enter into phytocannabinoids. Cannabis is the star of the show for phytocannabinoids, but other plants work on the CB receptor sites, including turmeric, echinacea, licorice root, cocoa, several others. They work in a much lower action than cannabis just because there's so much, but they work. So sometimes you'll see phytocannabinoids where you'll have cannabis and then maybe some turmeric added in or some echinacea added in. Or if somebody doesn't want to use cannabis, you can use some of these other plant materials to work on the cannabinoid system. Then we have terpenes. I love my terpenes. Terpenes are constituents that are in the plant that, again, drive the action of cannabis. So I have 3 examples. There are hundreds. There's like myrcene, humulene, all of these different terpenes, but beta caryophyllene is one terpene that helps with pain. So beta caryophyllene is in clove essential oil. It's in black pepper essential oil. It's in balsam copaiba essential oil. Those essential oils are really helpful for pain. So if I look at the terpene, then it's going to tell me what it's going to do. And if we go back to this slide, if you look at the synergistic terpenoids, you'll look and see on cannabidiol, you have linalool and caryophyllene in there. So limonene is a terpene that's in citrus oils, lemon, orange. When you smell that oil, you're smelling that limonene terpene. What they've done is they've isolated limonene and they put it in cleaning products. So if you have lemon pledge, it has limonene and it's like the isolated constituent, but limonene is good for uplifting and it's good for like just kind of like lightening the mood. If we go back and look, we can see that limonene is in THC, CBD, CBC, and CBG. So we're just kind of like looking at what is this. Linalool is in lavender, very sedating terpenoid, terpene. So it's going to kind of just calm you down. So with full spectrum hemp extract, you won't see these apart from what Nutritional Frontiers has done with their paper. You don't generally see that information for full spectrum hemp extract. They usually just put like how much CBD is in it. So again, another reason to know why you're buying this from Nutritional Frontiers and not from the gas station. So whenever we're looking at those things, it just really is important. But when you look at whenever if you have a medical marijuana card and you look at the dispensary information, they will a lot of times list this, and the terpenes influence how the user is going to feel when they're using the product. Within the endocannabinoid system, we have what's called ECS tone. And the ECS tone is just looking at those endocannabinoids, 2-AG and AEA, and how is it working? Is it working effectively? How is it helping you? And the role of the endocannabinoid system is to maintain homeostasis throughout the body. So it's always trying to achieve and maintain balance. So with the endocannabinoid system and the tone, does it help with everything? Does it solve all of the problems? Because sometimes you'll be like, oh yeah, CBD can help with that. CBD can help with that. I showed you a paper where it had like CBD can help with everything. And I was listening to a podcast and this guy said it perfectly. It doesn't solve everything. It just solves one thing, and that's the endocannabinoid system. It just so happens that the endocannabinoid system touches all of the other systems. So our system's already set up to be functioning, and that cell signaling. So this is kind of like a really complicated thought process, but if you have your endocannabinoid or your endogenous cannabinoids, we could have too much or too little, but you can't run to the doctor and be like, hey, can I have some blood work? Can you check my ECS tone? They're going to look at you and be like, wait a minute, what? You're good. go have some fun. So there's no way to test, but our bodies will tell us. Like if you're involved in wellness, holistic health, if you listen to your body, it will tell you what it needs. And with the endocannabinoid system, when there is dysregulation, what happens is we notice we have more pain, more inflammation. There's supplements that we can take that quiets that down. However, getting those receptor sites to start talking and our signaling mechanism to work is going to help support that. So, with the nerve communication, usually, so within the nervous system, we have nerve bundles and they communicate like an end to end communication. So, it's like if I say something and I whisper in your ear, like the telephone game, like I whisper in your ear, then you do it. That's nerve signaling. It just kind of goes down the line. The interesting thing, so you have a talking point and a listening point on the synaptic hit. So the talking point sends it to the listening point. The CB1 and CB2 receptor sites are on the listening side and it talks back. So that's how it gets it to kind of quiet the system down in any way. So if we're taking a supplement or whatever or a pharmaceutical, it has to work systemically and it has to follow that nerve pathway. When you start to use CBD and cannabis and full spectrum hemp extract, it goes in and it works on that nerve pathway on a cellular level and it back talks. So it quiets it at the point. So if you have anxious thoughts and you're needing something to quiet that down, this works quickly because it works on that endocannabinoid system and the CB receptor sites. That was the light version. And I'm not a scientist, so I had my hip waders on. No, I'm kidding. So I talked about the endocannabinoid system and the endogenous cannabinoids, but then we have receptor sites. The receptor sites, according to Bruce Lipton, who's written much about epigenetics, receptor sites are like a baseball glove, and then the molecule's like a baseball. So if we have CB1 and CB2 receptor sites, they're mapping it out in the brain or I'm sorry, in the body, and they're finding more and more and more places. A lot of the first research that I saw on the CB1 and CB2 receptor sites came from University of Jerusalem and Israel and Prague. They have done a lot of mapping for the CB1 and CB2 receptor sites. But it basically they're all through the body. This is a very limited diagram because as we move forward, we're going to find that it is literally everywhere. I feel like it's like fascia, like whenever you start talking about fascia and fascia release and the role of fascia in the body, and it's like, oh yeah, fascia's in your brain, fascia's in your spinal cord. Well, CB receptor sites are there too. So that's just, part of that whole way our body is designed to work beautifully in harmony. So let's get to some product. Nutritional Frontiers has full spectrum hemp extract and they have 4 flavors: original, mint, lemon, and cinnamon. If you're going to take a full spectrum hemp extract that doesn't have an added flavor like mint, lemon, or cinnamon, the original flavor can kind of sometimes taste like you might taste a peppery note, or sometimes it'll be like a little bit like spicy. Those are the terpenes. The terpenes are what, like you might, if it tastes peppery, that plant that was extracted might be high in piperine. And piperine is a terpene that is in black pepper. And piperine is also a terpene that's in hemp, and it's pretty dominant. So you're going to taste that if you don't have a flavor. Some of those flavors will shine through, but not always. The mint, lemon, and cinnamon is to make it a little bit more palatable. Some of the key benefits, and these are all of the full spectrum hemp extracts are CBD dominant with 0.03% or less of THC. And again, I'm going to say this because I cannot stress it enough. If you are working for someone who does drug testing, please just pick another supplement. It's just not worth the risk. So some of the benefits is that it helps with pain. That was me, Sorry. Um, it helps with pain, inflammation, and it supports our overall mental health. There's a lot of research on PTSD and the benefits of CBD because of the way that it works in the brain. And OCD and panic disorder, like it quiets that mechanism. And a lot of the reason is because of what I told you about that end to end nerve communication and it working on this receptor site of the listening side and talking back and saying, hey, it's okay, calm down, we're good. And so that's kind of the action that it's working on. So another amazing benefit for the Nutritional Frontiers hemp extract is that it is certified organic, and hemp is a product that leaches toxins from the soil. So sometimes like if we're going to reference like the gas station, you don't know where it came from. And so if it came from dirty soil, you're going to get a dirty product because it comes through. And it's just like all of our supplements. You need to know your source. You need to know what the person that is selling it to you has invested in their testing and what kind of quality they're bringing to the table because as a user or as a practitioner, that matters. Like what you're putting into your body matters, whether it's CBD, full spectrum hemp, or food, it matters. There are different sizes available. Mike just told me that they're just having the 30 milliliter sizes available now. This is kind of the bottle. And then there is the MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride fractionated coconut oil. So all that means is coconut oil is solid at room temperature. When you have a medium chain triglycerated fractionated coconut oil, it just keeps it liquid. That's all. So the suggested use is for adults to take one full dropper twice a day. You want to shake because the terpenes and the cannabinoids kind of settle down to the bottom because they're a little heavier in molecular weight. I like to tell people to start about half if you've never used any full spectrum hemp extracts, just to see how your CB1 and your CB2 receptor sites and your endogenous cannabinoid system, how is it working? Because I said there's no testing, there's no marker that says like, hey, you got good ECS tone. So when you start low and go slow and titrate up, you're going to be able to understand how you feel when you're taking the full spectrum hemp extract. If you take a dropper full, you might just feel a little more tired. It's CBD dominant, so the chances of you having a psychoactive response like you would if you did use something THC dominant is really low. Like if you're really sensitive, you might, but that's why I say to start like with half a dropper full and kind of like titrate up. So the full spectrum hemp extract cream, it comes in two sizes. And I love the packaging for Nutritional Frontiers because a lot of times you'll see the packaging labeling is really, really, really confusing. And they've really cleaned it up because if you use like the full spectrum hemp liquid, it'll say on there that you have 26 milligrams of organic hemp extract and then 20 milligrams of CBD. What that means is the whole entire picture is 26 milligrams. That means the full spectrum, entourage, the terpenes, all of the minor cannabinoids, 26 milligrams. CBD specifically is 20 milligrams, and they pay for that test to standardize that dosing. Okay. And it's not cheap. I'm not saying I know how much it is. I'm just saying from an aromatherapy standpoint to get those tests, you're spending a little money. So just saying. So the full spectrum cream has lipoderm added. And just like when we talk about adding in terpenes and getting benefits, adding in lipoderm actually works on the pain receptor site on the skin, which is the TRPV1 pain receptor site that sends a signaling loop back to the brain to quiet down the pain. But then it helps to drive the product into the skin and get to the source. So it'll kind of relax your muscles. You'll notice an instant relief of pain, usually 15 minutes or less. And I had one client has a lot of really, really bad arthritis in her hands, and her fingers are just very um, they look painful. And she'll use this and she says it just takes the edge off like immediately. Like she'll just like slather it on. And the other nice benefit is sometimes when you find some full spectrum hemp extract creams and things like that, they will add essential oils in to get that terpenoid profile jacked up, and with that comes an aroma. And a lot of people don't necessarily like to smell like icy hot all day. I don't mind it, but some people don't want to. So there's no smell with this. So you can use it freely, and you can apply it. Like she could apply it to her hands and go to work and not have to worry about somebody like smelling the clove essential oil that was added or whatever. It is for external use only. Do not take it internally. And then the other product from Nutritional Frontiers is the CBD gummies or the CB drops. And they are just a gummy. They have hemp oil extract and then they have the full spectrum hemp extract. It does contain less than 0.03% of THC. Um, I feel like, do I need to say it again? If you're getting drug tested, can you ever say it too much? Just be careful when you're doing this. They use natural coloring agents, so you don't have to worry about any dyes or anything like that. If you're using the CBD drops, and you're starting out, if you are super sensitive or you're really not sure or a little timid, just start with half. You're probably not going to feel anything bad, but you will feel a little bit of just kind of like a calmer, take a deep breath, sort of feeling. Um, so, to sum it all up, we want to start by using half of the recommended dose and titrate up to the maximum recommended dose. So, for this, it's one dropper 1 to 2 times a day. There's no time limit, but you can use one pump. And I think that they have it on here, it's 0.5 milliliters in one pump. So, you're just getting that small dose. You can use that 2 or 3 times a day. This is 1 to 2 times a day, and it's based on your specific need. And always start low and go slow. Um, you can use topical and oral products together. I also like to add in supplements. So if I'm working with someone who has a lot of pain response, I'll use the full spectrum hemp extract, maybe have them use the topical cream and then add in like the green lipped muscle or relax or HA plus and kind of get like my own little entourage effect with adding in different supplements to support all of the systems working together. Um, so we can recommend it for people who have a high pain issue, if they're trying to manage pain, brain health, which mental health, any type of PTSD, OCD, anxiolytic, um, any type of sadness or depression, CBD dominant products work really, really well. As I stated earlier, if you are a medical marijuana user and you're using THC dominant, a lot of times if you have anxiousness, it can actually make you feel more anxious, and that's when adding in the CBD really calms that pathway down. As I said, you can combine it with other supplements to enhance for specific concerns. So I welcome any questions. I do actually see clients that have the medical card and feel really, really overwhelmed with like, I don't know where to start. But to be honest, with a full spectrum hemp extract, you're going to address a lot of the concerns you need to address and then add in supplements in a very safe way. So if you have any questions, I welcome them. And I always like to end my presentations with an extreme amount of gratitude for your time, because time is one of the resources that once we spend it, we can't get it back. We can always make more money, but we can't make more time. And so for you investing time in what I had to say, I'm genuinely grateful for that. And I thank you for your time. Sure. Yeah. So for children, the question was, can you go through the dosing for kids and how you would use it for kids? So kids who tend to have issues with brain health concerns, with maybe having like OCD or being on the spectrum or things like that, because of the way that the CB receptor sites quiet that nerve pathway. I would start actually, depending on their age and their size. I always say 4 and under. Uh, that's a little tricky, but start with a quarter. 4 and up, start with a quarter of the adult dose, and then just use that for a week or two. Observe the response, observe how the child is responding to the dose, and then you can titrate up if need be. But a lot of times, a little goes a very, very long way. And with each person, it's a very it's difficult to say in a general way, like, okay, yes, at this age use that, because each one of us, adult or child, reacts differently to things. So um, I would say to work with a practitioner and then just really, really monitor the dose, start really, really low, and then titrate up if need be. The cream, there's nothing in the cream that would hurt them. And just a side note for the cream, CBD is amazing for contact dermatitis, poison oak, poison ivy. It quiets the itch down. Just remember that, because kids go out and play. That's where my
combining the gummies or CBD with other formulations. I know for a teenager, one gummy, one sleep time work great.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, so
it's on the same schedule.
Yes. So the comment for the teenager to have a CBD gummy and the sleep time, and again, getting that entourage effect. So you have the melatonin that's working in separate pathways in the brain. The sleep time has GABA. I'm trying to think off the top of my head all the other things, but then they all have their role. But the CBD, again, what I said in the very early part, we have an endocannabinoid system that is alive and ready to be like spoken to. So when you're taking it with a supplement, you're actually working on different systems of the body and getting your own entourage effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like it's lost over the years a little bit of its luster, but it's still as important as it was in 2018 because of the endocannabinoid system that everybody has. So, what about how do did you mention pets? Did I miss that part?
I did not mention pets.
How about pets, and what would you do with pets and CBD?
So pets and CBD, you can use CBD with pets. The pets actually have an extremely sensitive endocannabinoid system, like more sensitive than our own human endocannabinoid system. I have a geriatric dog that gets full spectrum hemp extract. He limps around and he's 15 and he kind of cries a little while. So I just put like and it's by their body weight. So, and if you ask the vets, they kind of shy away from that, just probably from a liability standpoint. But it depends on the weight of the animal. So the smaller the animal, the smaller the dose. My dog weighs 15 pounds, and I give him like between an eighth and a quarter of a dropper. Actually, my husband does it, so it's probably a quarter of a dropper, because if it works at an eighth, why not a quarter? But it does help him. He kind of like, after, probably the hang time, like the how it works, it probably lasts a couple hours, and he'll kind of romp around. Um, it would interfere with it, but if you part the hair and just put it like on a little area, you can do that. Yes, exactly. The only thing is, like, you just don't want to put it where they can lick it, because that with the cream, you have added ingredients in there that you wouldn't want them licking. But sometimes I'll just take behind their neck, like on their spine where they can't reach, just kind of part that and just put a tiny little bit, because they can't get back there to. Cats are different. And cats, honestly, you have to be a little bit careful with cats, because a lot of their methylating factors. And I really don't work with pets. I just know what precious little I know, but for my own benefit. But with cats, they don't methylate a lot of the terpenes. So when we talk about full spectrum hemp extract, and then my experience with aromatherapy, we have to be super careful with the way that they metabolize the terpenes, because cats do not have the ability, like they don't have the enzymes in their liver to metabolize that out.
I know you've shared with me many incredible cases through the years with your CBD, with your clients. What would you say is the best testimonial you've had used it for with the CBD through the years?
I would say definitely for pain response, and using the full spectrum hemp extract and the cream in tandem, and then adding in some of the pain support from the supplements, but using them in tandem. I had a lady that was, I don't remember the name of the pharmaceutical, but she was encouraged to take a pharmaceutical for pain and inflammation response. And she really didn't want to deal with the side effects. So she reached out to me and she was like, "Is there anything you can do to help?" And I was like, "Just try this." I advised her to start low, go slow. But again, the full spectrum hemp extract gives you that full entourage effect. And I reached out to her a couple weeks later. "How's it working?" "Great." Didn't really hear much later, or much at that time. And when she was getting low, she texted me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I need some of that." Like I've been rationing it and I really can tell the difference. And I was like, yes. So she didn't actually have to go to taking the pharmaceuticals, and she was able to get so much relief. And she was so grateful, because there's no adverse effects. Like, you're only getting side benefits when you're using it.
I missed the first part. Did you mention homeostasis?
I did.
Okay, good.
The
That's
endocannabinoid
probably
system.
why people don't feel as much of an effect until they stop, because
Correct.
it's bringing you back to where you should be.
Yes. And honestly, if you're using CBD and cannabis products therapeutically, to feel a high feeling, like, and I'm speaking specifically for THC dominant, that's not the objective. The objective is to feel balanced. Like, we all just want to feel good, and not good as in like out of the box good. Like, we just want to get up and not creak. So with the ECS tone, and I did address the ECS tone, and looking at that, and the role of CBD in the body is to maintain homeostasis. And homeostasis is all about balance.
All right. Thank you.